welcome to Tuesday's programme. Today, details of the DUP's £3.3 billion deal with the UK government became clear, and at the heart of it is a request that Stormont ministers raise £113 million by themselves. But how might they do that? Well, there are limited options. Some, to be fair, are more realistic than others, and they've been talked about over the last year, 6 months or so. The big one is, of course, rates. Now, if rates were to go up by 15%, it would come to that £113 million figure. That's how the calculation was made. But many won't see that as a popular option. Tuition fees, upping them is an option, but Conor Murphy, the Economy Minister, has already ruled that out this week. Prescription charges could be introduced, but something like that would only raise around £20 million. Not a huge amount when you compare it to something like the big one, introducing water charges. That could create around £350 million in extra spending power for Stormont. However, the First Minister, Michelle O'Neill, told this programme just this week it won't happen on her watch. There are other options that have been talked about. However, realistic they might be is up for debate. Upping the price of school dinners, unlikely, probably unpopular with some families as well. They could increase the age at which pensioners get their free transport passes. Also, fees for MOTs and driving tests could go up. Ultimately, whatever combination of revenue raising they come up with, MLAs will have to reach the £113 million number, according to the government. Well, our political correspondent, Jane McCormack, has been getting initial reaction up at Stormont.
Look closely and you'll find strings attached to Stormont's return. The government says it's about putting our finances on a better footing. In a letter from the Treasury, it spelled out that the Executive must deliver a balanced budget for 2024-25 at the outset of the financial year by raising a minimum of £113 million through locally generated income. But our First Minister doesn't seem to see it that way.
I have not signed up to revenue raising. I don't believe the parties here have either.
That's not the government's view. They say they have it in black and white.
Well, they do not have it in black and white. I can be very sure of that.
Clear, not quite. Spotted today, perhaps talking about all this, the head of the civil service and a DUP minister who's also not for budging.
There has been no commitment to introduce new revenue raising measures in Northern Ireland. I would say this to the government. Northern Ireland has been underfunded according to need for many, many years. And I think it's really, really important that we consider the implications that revenue raising would have on the people of Northern Ireland at a time when their public services are not up to scratch. And we shouldn't be expecting people in Northern Ireland to pay more for public services that are not as they should be.
No party disputes that, but there is disagreement over how negotiations will be handled.
The place for this negotiation to happen is between the Executive and the UK Government, with the Finance Minister supported by their officials. It was never going to be the case that individual parties, traipsing back and forth from Hillsborough Castle, were going to get all of the details pinned down with Treasury.
I don't think it's seemly. All this could have been agreed and should have been agreed and tied down before Christmas, frankly, certainly before we were all back here a week or two ago. So it's welcome that there is a little more clarity, but we don't have proper clarity yet.
The reality to all of this is you can't stop the conversation. We need to have the conversation. And if this is a tactic about hardballing the negotiations, I understand that. But let's not close it all off.
Open or resistant, this former civil servant says the financial fight ahead could prove challenging.
It's going to be quite a battle because Treasury are not a pushover, never were. You have to go with how you're going to spend the money, what you need it for, and there are competing priorities right across the board.
The Executive's priority now will be taking the sting out of this argument. To some, revenue raising has long felt like Stormont's unfinished business. If politics, though, is the art of compromise, we should expect a solution to be found. Jane McCormack, BBC Newsline, Stormont.
Well, let's go live to Stormont this evening. Our political editor, Enda McLafferty, is standing by for us. And to just spell out what's at stake here.
Well, the first thing to say, Declan, this is a negotiation and both sides are now playing hardball. Yesterday, the Executive made it clear that it hasn't signed up for revenue raising. Today, the government says it has. And what's more, it's demanding that £113 million be raised in extra revenue over the course of the next 12 months. Now, where does that figure come from? Well, we know the government has made the calculation that that amount could be raised if the regional domestic rate in Northern Ireland was raised by some 15%. Now, that would bring extra hardship for many families right across across Northern Ireland. But for the government, it's a price worth paying, because they say if that amount is erased by May, then the government will write off a debt of some £560 million, which is hanging over the institutions here at Stormont. That, of course, would allow for better planning when it comes to sustaining public services in Northern Ireland, because if that burden is not lifted, then we will be in a very different place economically. Now, that is the calculation the government has made. It's quite clear they're on a collision course with the executive, and I think it's all going to come down to who blinks first.
Have we heard anything from the new Finance Minister?
Yes, Kiva Archibald today fired off a letter to the Chief Secretary at the Treasury, making it very clear this proposal is simply unacceptable. She did acknowledge that the Executive has signed up to a sustainability plan, and we know that includes revenue-raising measures. But she said it was unrealistic for that plan to be published and implemented by May. She also said it was unrealistic for the Executive to be expected to raise around £113 million. She said to do that would cause a lot of harm for a lot of families out there, and it's not something the Executive, in a sense, was prepared to do. So you get a feeling, Declan, that this is going to rumble on for some time, although we are being told that there's negotiations planned in the coming weeks.
I'd be interested, though, in your sense, Enda, for how you think this is going to play out between now and May.
Well, that is the big question, Declan. We did ask the government today what's going to happen if we arrive in May, no plan published and no £113 million raised. What is going to be London's response then? We were told this is an absolute red line. This must happen, or else the Stormont here is going to be saddled with that £560 million debt. I get a sense, Declan, that this is probably really about the government trying to force our politicians to act, to take those big decisions when it comes to revenue raising, whatever the cost, so that they can start and move forward in a very different way here.
Right, Enda, for now, thanks very much. There's more, of course, on the website this evening. Let's stay, though, with Money Matters. And rising costs mean there's no guarantee the Casement Park GAA Stadium in West Belfast will be rebuilt in time to host matches in the Euro 2028 football tournament. That is according to the new Minister in charge of Sport. It's Gordon Lyons of the DUP, and he's been speaking to our correspondent, Mark Simpson.
How much is it going to cost to redevelop Casement Park? You've seen the paperwork, you've had a look at the books here at this department.
That number isn't finalised, but even if it was, obviously you can understand for commercial reasons, I can't go into to the details of what that might be.
You must know roughly what it's going to be. Could it be more than £200 million?
Look, I don't want to get into those figures, but I think it is.
I do, though, and the people need to know.
And I understand that, but you have to understand, as Minister, there are commercial sensitivities that I have to be aware of as well. But yes, it is the case that it is going to be considerably more than what was originally thought.
You're committed as an executive to £62 million, £62.5 million. The GAA is going to pay $15 million. We're told the British and Irish governments are prepared to dip into their pockets. Do you know how much?
Well, no, we don't have the clarity on that yet, either from the Irish government or from the UK government. And that is going to be key.
You don't have the figure. We heard on BBC Newsline last week, Declan Harvey pushing the Secretary of State, Chris Heaton-Harris. He said he had a figure, he just wasn't telling Declan. Has he told Gordon?
No, he hasn't, and I was surprised to hear those comments from the Secretary of State, because if he has a figure in mind, it's not one that this department is aware of.
What do you say to fans of the GAA who look at a DUP minister and think, do you know what, with him in charge, Casement's now doomed?
The first thing that I would say is that this is not going to be a decision that I will make alone. There are different funders that will be required in order for this to proceed. But I will say this very clearly. I'm going to be the Minister for Sport, not for one particular sport, not for one particular section of society. I'm going to be a champion for sport in Northern Ireland, and nobody should have any fear about me being in this position.
Final question on Casement Park. Do you think it will be built?
That is entirely dependent upon the funding envelope being made available. But what we do need to have as well, if there will be additional UK public funds committed to Casement Park, I think it is important that we see that investment in football as well. A footballing tournament should have a footballing legacy, and I'm really keen to see that progressed.
The Communities Minister Gordon Lyons speaking to Mark Simpson. Well, thanks for being with us this evening. Still on the way, the council investigating CCTV footage showing bin workers apparently mixing waste. 3 men have gone on trial accused of murdering Ian Ogle in East Belfast 5 years ago. He was 45 when he died after being beaten and stabbed 11 times near his home in Cluan Place. Kevin Sharkey was in court for us.
Today, the prosecution alleged that the fatal attack came just over half an hour after Ian Ogle and his son attacked a relative of theirs along this road because of an incident at this bar over a year previously. Today's hearing heard that on the night of the murder, Ian Ogle was on a street close to his family home with a local pastor. He told the pastor that they were on their way. The pastor prayed with him, and he later observed a group of men coming towards Ian Ogle and attacking him like a pack of hyenas. The trial was also shown CCTV footage capturing Ian Ogle being attacked. The 3 men who sat separately in the dock watched on as more CCTV footage was shown, this time from a nearby glider bus stop. It showed 5 men after the attack on the Albert Bridge Road. 2 of them were running, and the prosecution says they were Alan Irvine, who was carrying a long brass-coloured implement, and Robert Spears, who had a long dark implement which may have been a knife. The trial resumes tomorrow. Kevin Sharkey, BBC Newsline.